very well. Are you ready for the interview?
I believe so. Let's get started.
All right. Well, first things first. Now that the war is officially over, what were your overall feelings about it?
My overall feelings for the war were not good. For me specifically, I was in the Philippines station there in 1941, and when Pearl Harbor was bombed by the Japanese, they made a quick assault that was very silent on us as well. A couple of days after Pearl Harbor was bombed, and they basically wiped out half of our base. So, and really that led into us getting moved into the Bataan Peninsula, where I was in charge, and all my men fought valiantly while I was told to leave by our president. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave my men either. I didn't have a choice. It was either that or die. I told them I would be back as well. I wasn't going to leave my men behind. No man gets left behind. It's the American motto, especially in the military. Back onto the topic though, the war was just, I have bad feelings about the whole war. There was a lot of things that we did that we didn't need to do. But we did them, and it is what it is. So we have to really move forward from that and hope and just keep in mind that we did what we had to.
Now on to a very controversial subject. The bombing of Japan. What do you think about it? Was it necessary?
Necessary to bomb Japan? At the beginning of the war, when they were producing equally as to us, and they were superior in air power than us, and they had just as much naval power as us, yes. If we had the ability to bomb them on their homeland or closer to their mainland, yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, you gotta level the playing field. They were producing just about as much as we were. So yeah, at the beginning of the war, definitely we should have. I thought it was necessary then, but it wasn't possible. They had too much power spread out that we weren't able to infiltrate that close and destroy the production. In just about every city up and down their coastline, from coast to coast on that island, we weren't targeting facilities that were creating war productions or anything needed for the war. We were bombing civilians. We bombed just about every city in Japan and leveled at least 30% in almost all cities.
Wow.
With that, I mean, there really was no reason for that. The war was coming down to an end. The soldiers that were fighting had lost their morale. They were no longer holding their ground, willing to die for their country. They were surrendering. And when they started to surrender, that's how you knew the tide of the war had changed. They would not surrender. They wanted to die for their country at the beginning of the war. And to start bombing their civilians is unnecessary, especially at that point. We had them broken. It was just a matter of fact of rebuilding them and really ending that battle and the war in general.
Specifically with the Pacific Theater, was there ever a moment in the war where it looked bleak for the United States?
Most definitely, yeah. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the war, they had the surprise. We didn't have any form of understanding where they were, and if we did, it wasn't fully accurate until the Battle of Midway, when the war really changed. We were able to catch 4 aircraft carriers out, catch them off guard, and we were able to ambush them somewhat, or get close enough to them where they were. It was an open battle, exactly where they were, what they were doing, what they had for resources. So we did what we could in that situation, and that really changed the war. It did, but for looking bleak, the beginning of the war was not ours. It was not ours, especially when it came to trying to figure out how to island hop once we did get closer into the Philippines and Guadalcanal and Guam. We didn't know what we were doing. We'd never been in that kind of warfare before, dealing with people that dug into islands, dealing with tunnels underground, the kamikazes. Like, we'd never seen anything like that before. Not to mention, we're still getting newly acquainted to the amphibious equipment that we had, we'd get used to that kind of stuff. The island hopping technique was totally new. It was mainly guerrilla warfare. You had to adapt, and it was not good for us.
Now on to the future. What kind of changes can we expect? Economically, what do you see? What's next for the United States and the rest of the world?
Well, I'll start with the U.S. first, and you mentioned economically. As the whole country and world is aware of, we were the production of the war. We produced everything, top to bottom. We switched over many production lines from cars and automobiles to war products, tanks, planes, naval equipment, artillery, ammo, everything. We outproduced everybody by a long shot at that. We supplied the whole war to everybody in the Allies, really. And that's all got to change. That's all got to switch back to regular production for an economy that's not in war. So you have to switch back all those production lines. You don't need as much iron anymore for that use or purpose. But it's all that information. Like the construction is going to start rising again. All the soldiers are coming back from war. Now you gotta factor that in. So now you have all that extra labor that was serving before. They got to get back to what they were doing. And women stepped in hugely during the war. So now it's going to be different for them stepping back into the role of really being somewhat of a housewife. To stay at home, take care of the kids, clean the house, do that kind of thing. And it's going to be different for them because they really stepped up during the war to fill in the spots that the men left. As for around the world, there's a lot of rebuilding physically that has to be done. Basically, all of Europe is blown up or in ashes, destroyed buildings. Same with Japan. Japan is demolished, flat ground really, from all the bombs that were dropped. Along with in Europe too, everything is destroyed. There is no transportation system in Europe whatsoever. Everything's been destroyed. And now you have to rebuild all that, along with Japan as well. You have to rebuild everything. And for Japan specifically, now you have to figure out how you want to have a ruler for that. Now I'm actually one of the main people trying to help them rebuild the whole government from the top up, because it was a fascist government. So now the emperor lost his power. So now we have to find a way to rewrite their constitution, because that was rewrote during the war and before it. So we have to rewrite their constitution, literally rebuild their country, because it's destroyed. So that takes time, and now you have to find a way in the future in these upcoming years to really start that up again. It's basically starting from the ground up, literally. There's nothing left. You gotta rebuild all over the world.
Wow. Well, thank you, General MacArthur. Thank you for your time, and hopefully it won't be long before we see you again.